Humans don't negotiate with teeth. That's what Ambassador Drexith learned the hard way when Carl Avery bit clean through a sensory tendril at a dive bar floating in the void of space. What happened next didn't just start a fight. It rewrote everything the galaxy thought they knew about Earth's newest members. This wasn't supposed to happen. Earth had been in the Galactic Compact for exactly 4 months. The ink on the peace treaty was still drying. Humans were the new kids on the block, trying to play nice with dozens of alien species who had centuries of diplomatic experience. But Carl Avery wasn't a diplomat. He was a welder from Montana with a taste for moonshine and absolutely zero patience for alien etiquette. And on that night at the Gutted Worm, the seediest bar in neutral space, Carl was about to teach the galaxy a lesson they'd never forget. The Gutted Worm was famous for 2 things: serving the strongest fermented thrust juice in 3-star systems, and having the highest insurance rates in known space because fights broke out there every single night. It was the kind of place where species came to drink, gamble, and pretend they weren't planning to kill each other in trade wars. Carl was on his 3rd drink when it happened. Ambassador Drexith, a pompous alien diplomat with writhing tendrils for a face, made the mistake of commenting, a little too loudly, that humans seemed socially inefficient and chemically unstable. Now, most species would have filed a formal complaint, maybe called for a committee meeting, demanded an apology through proper channels. Carl just asked him to repeat it. Drexith, thinking it was a translation error, said it again. Slower this time, more condescending. That's when Carl bit him. Not a little nip, a full commitment bite. He clamped down on that tendril and held on for 6 full seconds while Drexith shrieked like a dying space whale and thrashed backward through 2 tables and a 4-armed card player. But here's where it gets interesting. In Zouthi culture, that's Drexith's species, touching someone during an argument is basically a legal challenge. But biting? That a declaration of war against their entire bloodline going back 12 generations. 3 seconds later, Drexith's bodyguard jumped into action. This thing was built like a nightmare. 6 arms, covered in spikes, twice Carl's size, and probably 3 times his weight. Most humans would have run screaming. Carl picked up a bar stool and swung it like a baseball bat. The impact knocked the alien out cold and fractured 3 of his ribs. The bar went dead silent except for the hum of the artificial gravity and a ceiling fan that served absolutely no purpose in space, but somehow made the place feel more like home. Carl blinked like he was just realizing he might have overreacted. Then some drunk alien threw a glass, and that's when the real fight started. What happened next defied every prediction, every computer model, every careful analysis the aliens had done of human behavior. See, humans were classified as mid-tier predators. Cooperative, social, mildly aggressive when provoked, but manageable. This bar fight threw that classification in the trash. Carl didn't fight fair. He didn't fight clean. He didn't even fight in a way that made sense. He stabbed drinking straws into eye sockets, kicked over hover tables to trip charging aliens, and at one point used a bucket of pickled tentacles as a weapon. But the truly disturbing part? Other humans joined in. Not because anyone asked them to. Not because they had a plan. They just did. Like sparks hitting dry grass, they exploded into action. AX miner named Dax used a serving tray to deflect energy weapons. Hugo, a one-lunged mechanic, tackled a lizard thing from behind and bit its tail. Greg, a quiet astrophysicist who weighed less than a bag of groceries, stood on the bar throwing bottles with such accuracy that the 214-year-old bartender later compared him to a military siege weapon. Not one punch was pretty. Not one move followed any martial arts manual. But it worked. And when the humans won, they didn't stop because they were victorious. They stopped because they got bored. The security footage leaked within hours. Some corrupt courier sold the 34-minute video to a smuggler who streamed it under the title Primitive Earth Mammals Attempt Ritual Combat. It got 6 million views before the government censors could take it down. But by then, it was too late. Every alien species in the galaxy had seen humans fight, and they didn't know what to think. Academic circles went crazy. Alien psychologists studied every frame, diagrammed every punch, calculated aggression metrics. Some wanted Earth reclassified as a spontaneous swarm aggressor. Others argued humans entered a drug-induced feral state. But they all missed the point. The Trovians thought it was the alcohol. The Nari said humans were biochemically unstable. The Drari, who loved their fancy metaphors, called humans sentient wreckage given fists. Meanwhile, Ambassador Drexith, now missing 2 tendrils and recovering in a low-gravity medical facility, filed a formal complaint that included the phrase unprovoked act of oral warfare. Carl got released after 12 hours. No charges. The bartender actually vouched for him. "You bit a Zouthie and lived," the old alien muttered, tossing Carl his jacket. "Don't come back for a while." But something had changed. Not in the humans. They were mostly confused about why everyone was making such a big deal. The change was in everyone else. They stared now, kept their distance, whispered. A week later, Carl was called to fix a coolant leak on an alien trade ship. Normally, the aliens would make snide comments about human tools, ask condescending questions, maybe crack jokes. This time, nothing. They just watched silently while the humans crawled through the maintenance tunnels and fixed their ship. They looked scared, Carl mentioned to Dax later. "You did bite a diplomat," Dax pointed out. "I barely drew blood. That's not what they care about. It's how we fought. We won." "No," Dax said quietly. "We didn't negotiate. That was the real shock, not the violence. The galaxy had plenty of violent species. It was the fact that humans didn't try to solve the problem by forming a committee or following ancient honor codes or cross-referencing ethics databases. They just fought. Loud, messy, chaotic. And it worked. The news spiraled out of control. The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions. Some delegates wanted Earth kicked out of the compact entirely. Others argued it was just a misunderstanding. The humans weren't invited to testify. But word reached Earth anyway. That's how Major Ruben Kazansky, Earth's military representative, found himself sitting across from a dozen alien species in a review panel that felt more like a trial. "How do you explain your people's actions?" they demanded. Kazansky didn't even blink. They were insulted. They responded with violence. They responded with effectiveness. No deaths, minimal property damage, no weapons used. That's restraint by our standards. A snake-like delegate hissed. "Your people exhibit behaviors of unstable pack predators." "We're not predators," Kazansky replied calmly. "We're adapters. We've survived 10,000 years of war, famine, and catastrophically bad decisions. When someone throws a glass, we assume the conversation is over." Then came the question they'd all been circling. Are humans inherently violent? Kazansky stared back. "No, but we don't believe conflict is sacred." He stood slowly. "You've built a galaxy where war is ceremony, where rules define every confrontation. That's not how we fight. We don't bow before we strike. We bite first, so we don't have to bury anyone later." He walked out before they could respond. 3 weeks after the incident, an alien freighter captain decided to test a human. His name was Brolic, and he had a reputation for provoking newcomers to see what made them snap. He found Hugo working on a docking station and started insulting Earth's gravity, atmosphere, and starship designs. Hugo didn't even look up. "Hand me the red wrench." Brolic got more aggressive, eventually shoving Hugo with his foot. "Do you lack honor, human, or just language?" Hugo stood up, wiped his hands calmly, and said, "Neither, but I do lack patience." Then he flicked a switch that sent a plasma cable snapping forward into Brolic's face, knocking him into a stack of equipment. Security arrived to find Hugo already back to work, tightening bolts like nothing had happened. More footage, more views, more debates about whether humans were dangerous or just pragmatic. But other species started making quiet adjustments. The Zaranathi required their officers to take human interaction protocols. The Arxi declined work assignments with more than one human per team. Even the proud Trothans added clauses to their contracts. No personnel with direct exposure to human social conflict may be stationed in enclosed spaces with unmonitored humans. The humans found it hilarious. Greg called it the polite version of exile. Dax referred to it as involuntary VIP treatment. But then something unexpected happened. A alien security division requested a joint training exercise. Not with human diplomats or soldiers, with laborers. They wanted to study spontaneous group cohesion under unpredictable conditions. In plain English, please show us how you fight without warning or logic. Major Kazansky approved it immediately. They want to know how you think, he told the crew. Don't hold back. Don't explain. Just do what you do. The exercise was simple. Respond to a simulated pirate attack on a cargo bay. 15 aliens, 5 humans. The aliens formed ranks, established command hierarchy, and ran through threat assessment protocols. The humans grabbed pipes, crates, and cables and attacked with the same energy they brought to bar fights. 6 minutes later, every simulated pirate was neutralized. The aliens were still arguing about who was in command when the scenario ended. The lead analyst called it disorganized brilliance. But that wasn't what unsettled them most. It was the laughter. Humans didn't just survive conflict, they seemed to enjoy it. Not celebration, not bloodlust. Something else. A release. Like they were finally doing what they were built for. We work hard. We blow off steam, Carl explained to a journalist. That's how we stay sane. What if the steam becomes fire? The reporter asked. Carl shrugged. Then stopped lighting matches. But not everyone was frightened. Some were curious. That's how Carl ended up meeting Galactic, a 3-meter-tall tank of muscle and bone who looked like a gorilla bred with a military vehicle. Galactic approached Carl during routine maintenance with a simple request. I wish to spar. Carl blinked. You want to fight me? For knowledge. Carl chuckled. You're 3 meters tall. I will not use both arms. You better not. They cleared out a storage unit and went at it. No one expected Carl to land the first hit. No one expected Galactic to go down, even briefly. I did not think you could move that fast, Galactic said, shaking out his shoulder. Carl grinned. You're not the first to make that mistake. For the first time, aliens stopped asking, why are humans like this? And started asking, can we learn how? It was supposed to be a summit. 1,000 delegates showcasing peace, cooperation, and harmony between species. The humans sat in the back row with snacks, trying to look serious and failing. Carl, Dax, Greg, Hugo, and 2 others were there as Earth's cultural representatives. Ambassador Drexith was on stage, his tendrils grown back shorter but present, preparing to give a speech about interspecies respect through predictable behavior. It happened. A delegate from a hostile faction stormed the stage, seized a microphone, and began shouting in overlapping tones that broke the translation systems. Security moved, but not fast enough. The attacker slammed a data spike into the control console, causing feedback that sparked and pulsed through the platform. Lights dimmed. Translators failed. Systems glitched. More attackers burst through side entrances, armed with solid, brutal weapons that ignored most energy shields. The crowd panicked. Delegates scattered. Except the humans. They moved forward. Carl vaulted the divider. Dax broke a metal display stand off its base. Greg pulled down a ceremonial banner and wrapped it around his arm like a shield. They didn't wait for orders. They didn't ask permission. Major Kazansky simply nodded once, then ducked as a chair flew past. It wasn't trained combat. It wasn't orderly. It was pure instinct. Carl shoulder-tackled the lead attacker into a table of ceremonial food. Dax followed with a swing so loud it silenced the upper levels of the hall. Greg disarmed another attacker and slid the weapon across the floor to Hugo, who caught it mid-slide and used it to block the third alien strike. 30 seconds later, it was over. Security arrived to find 3 attackers down and the humans bruised, bleeding, and laughing. Ambassador Drexith stood against a wall, tendrils flickering in confusion. Are you hurt? Major Kazansky asked him. Kazansky looked down at Carl, who was wiping alien fruit juice off his face. That's a relief. It would have been a whole thing if you got bitten again. Later, after order was restored, the council reconvened in private. No press, no recordings. Just leaders trying to process what they'd witnessed. Drexith stood without notes. The humans did not wait for consensus. They did not ask who was in charge. They did not form a committee. They simply acted. Long pause. Some expected him to demand their removal. Instead, he added quietly, "And they saved my life." Major Kazansky rose. "No one wants chaos. We don't either. But our people are shaped by a world that taught us survival isn't always polite. You brought us here to learn how we think. What you saw today, that is how we think. Not in words, in action. We're not proud of it, but we're not ashamed either." The vote came quietly. The humans would remain. No sanctions, no demotion. But more interestingly, a new advisory unit was formed. Earth's first official situational response consultation cell. Carl and his team weren't expelled. They were promoted. The final report circulated to military schools and diplomatic colleges across dozens of star systems. It concluded with a single line that became famous throughout the galaxy. In a universe ruled by logic, the bar fight revealed something far more dangerous. Intuition unburdened by doubt. And from that day forward, one unspoken truth echoed in alien minds from core worlds to frontier outposts. If a human stands up and takes off his jacket, you have two choices: leave the room or help them fight. But whatever you do, don't just watch. Because humans don't negotiate with teeth. They bite first and ask questions later. And sometimes, in a galaxy full of committees and protocols and endless debates, that's exactly what the situation calls for. The universe learned that day that Earth's greatest export wasn't technology or art or philosophy. It was the simple, terrifying, beautiful truth that sometimes the best diplomacy is a well-timed bar stool to the face. And Carl Avery, welder from Montana, became the man who taught an entire galaxy that humans don't just survive chaos, they thrive in it.